In the news tonight, Daesh terrorists burned 45 Iraqis for unknown reasons, and Iraq's UN ambassador calls the group's crimes a genocide against humanity and urges more help to free areas under their control. Egypt calls for a United Nations resolution mandating an international coalition to intervene in Libya after the beheading of 21 Egyptian Christians in the country by Daesh terrorists. And two adventurous filmmakers go in search of the Aurora Borealis in Norway as they look to make a documentary about the science behind the Northern Lights. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. Here are the details. His Majesty the King received at Al Husseiniya Palace a U.S. delegation from the House of Representatives Military Service Committee led by House member Joe Wilson. His Majesty and the delegation discussed scopes of cooperation between Jordan and the U.S., as well as ongoing developments in the region, namely with respect to regional and international efforts aimed at combating terror groups and radicalism. The delegation praised the kingdom's role under King Abdullah's leadership in confronting terrorism and pledged continued U.S. support to Jordan as it confronts various challenges. The U.S.-led coalition has launched 6 airstrikes around the Syrian town of Kobani, where Kurdish forces have been successful in pushing back Daesh terrorists. A joint task force statement said the strikes destroyed 8 fighting positions and a checkpoint. Over a 24-hour period, the coalition also conducted 8 strikes on 6 areas in Iraq, hitting Daesh tactical units, buildings, and fighting positions. Meanwhile, in a new atrocity against the Iraqi people, Daesh terrorists have burned to death 45 people in the western Iraqi town of al-Baghdadi. Exactly who these people were and why they were killed is not clear, but a security source said he believed some were members of the security forces. Colonel Qasim al-Ubaidi added that a compound where the families of security personnel and local officials live was under attack. Daesh terrorists captured much of the town near Ain al-Asad air base last week, and al-Baghdadi had been besieged for months before its fall on Thursday. Iraq's ambassador to the United Nations, Muhammad Ali al-Hakim, described the crimes committed by Daesh terrorists as genocide and said his country needs more help to liberate areas under the terrorist group's control. UN envoy to Iraq, Nikolai Mladenov, also expressed grave concern about the safety of Iraq's diverse ethnic and religious communities in areas under Daesh control, particularly thousands of women and children still in captivity. He also cautioned about reports of revenge attacks committed against members of the Sunni community in areas liberated from Daesh. Al-Hakim told the UN Security Council the group have desecrated all human values and must be held accountable.
We look forward to a more effective role, particularly from neighboring countries, in cooperation and intelligence sharing, controlling borders, because these terrorist groups have desecrated all human values. They have committed the most heinous criminal terrorist acts against the Iraqi people, whether Shiite, Sunni, Christians, Turkmen, Shabak, or Yazidis. These are in fact crimes of genocide committed against humanity that must be held accountable before international justice.
And Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi called for a United Nations resolution mandating an international coalition to intervene in Libya after Egyptian jets bombed Daesh targets. Daesh released a video on Sunday showing the beheading of 21 Egyptian Christians, drawing Cairo directly into the conflict across its border. The events in Libya have also raised concerns the terrorists, already active in Syria and Iraq, were spreading their influence further. Sisi called on militias to hand in their arms, but urged weapons to be supplied to Libya's internationally recognized government based in the eastern city of Tobruk after rivals seized power in Tripoli.
What is going on in Libya could change this country into a breeding ground that will threaten the whole region, and not only Egypt. Egypt, the Mediterranean basin, and Europe have to deal with this problem because the mission was unaccomplished, was unfinished by our European friends. We abandoned the Libyan people as prisoners to extremist militias.
Meanwhile, the United Nations Human Rights Agency condemned the beheading by Daesh of the 21 Egyptian Christians in Libya. UN Human Rights spokesman Rupert Colville spoke at a news conference in Geneva, voicing the words of the High Commissioner Prince Zaid bin Raad, who urged the Libyan people to unite in their resistance against Takfiri groups such as Daesh.
The High Commissioner for Human Rights, Zaid Rad al-Hussein, describes the mass beheading of 20 Egyptian Coptic Christians and apparently one other Christian man in Libya as a vile crime targeting people on the basis of their religion. He urges Libyans to unite against extremists launching attacks based on religious, ethnic, national, racial or political grounds. The brutal murder of these men and the ghastly attempt to justify and glorify it in a video should be roundly condemned by everyone, and in particular by the people of Libya themselves, who should resist the urging of Takfiri groups like this one. And the murder of captives or hostages is clearly and unequivocally prohibited under international law and under Islamic law.
Over to Syria, where the Syrian army, backed by allied militia, have captured several villages near Aleppo in battles aimed at encircling the northern city and cutting off insurgent supply lines. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said heavy battles north of Aleppo blocked a road leading towards the Turkish border that rebels use as a supply route. The army also took villages including Bashkui and Sifat, while fighting raged in Hardantin and Ritian. Syrian state television said at least 18 insurgents and 5 people were killed. The advance on Aleppo is the second major offensive by pro-government forces in a week. Following almost 9 months of negotiations between Turkey and the U.S., the two sides reached an agreement on training the Free Syria Army. The agreement protocol will be signed at a meeting in the U.S. after Turkish Defense Minister Ismet Yilmaz meets U.S. officials at the White House Summit on Violent Extremism tomorrow or the day after. The Turkish Foreign Ministry spokesman said that once the protocol is signed, practical steps will be taken at a time no further than next month. The program is expected to start in March and will reportedly last 3 years. The U.S. military has said it is planning to send more than 400 troops, including special operations forces, to train Syrian moderates outside the country as part of the fight against Daesh terrorists. And back here at home, State Minister for Media Affairs Mohammed Al-Momani received, on behalf of the Prime Minister, a European Parliament delegation representing the Foreign Affairs Committee. The meeting dealt with the situation in the region, mainly the Palestinian issue, the crisis in Syria, and the fight against terrorism. Momani said Jordan highly appreciates the European Union's support geared towards developmental projects, particularly in light of the economic challenges facing the country. He reiterated Jordan's position on the Palestinian issue, saying it remains the key challenge facing the region, and the absence of a just solution creates a sense of injustice and a conducive environment for growing terrorism. Her Majesty Queen Rania visited the Chechen Charitable Society for Women in Swaleh, which offers a variety of services in the fields of health and education to women, children, and youth from the local community. Queen Rania met with the chair and member of the board and discussed with them services aimed at empowering women to take part in policy making and become community leaders through the project called Hiya or She. Another project by the Society is Beads of Hope, which trains women on handmade products using beads. The Society also has a knowledge station, which develops smartphone educational applications, in addition to a kindergarten and a daycare center. The Chechen Charitable Society was founded in 1981, and with financial assistance from the Ministry of Social Development, the Society set up revolving microcredit to provide small loans to startups. Two adventurous filmmakers have gone in search of the Aurora Borealis in Norway as they look to make a documentary about the science behind the Northern Lights. Over the past 3 months, the filmmakers Matos and Lund have spent most nights heading high up into the mountains in search of locations where they can capture time-lapse footage. Here's more.
The Northern Lights have been dazzling visual journalists for years, and these documentary filmmakers say they can look up for hours and just go into a trance.
Northern Lights are geomagnetic storms coming from the sun. Usually take up to 3 days before they enter the magnetic poles. It's different gases as well who creates different colors, like purple, green, or red. So just big solar storms coming through the magnetic poles.
Over the last 3 months, they've spent most nights in the mountains of Svalbard, looking for a place to film time-lapse footage and doing their best to keep their bodies and cameras as warm as possible.
Temperatures can go up to -35, so you need good gear and you need to set up your camera before you go out.
It's not a simple task to get where they need to go. They say it can take hours of driving their snowmobiles over terrain like this to find spots away from town where there is no light pollution. But they say the reward is worth the effort.
I really want to make a movie that people are going to see all over the world and understand better what Northern Lights are.
If they're successful, a documentary called Green Skies will be completed in 2017, and the world will watch the dance show in the sky.
And to New York and the Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week. Celebrating his 30th year in business, American designer Tommy Hilfiger went for a fashion touchdown, unveiling his fall 2015 collection inspired from the football field. The location of the show was transformed into an American football stadium, complete with a scoreboard and a jumbotron. Models were sent down the runway in football boots and oversized jersey dresses. While taking his cue from the football field, Hilfiger stayed true to his signature preppy style of plaid, duffel coats and pleated skirts with a 70s twist. Fabrics used in the collection included cashmere, mohair, alpaca, silk, shearling and fake fur.
It's your primitive is why yet. It's your primitive is why yet. If you got a big, let me search it to find out how hard I gotta work. Yeah, it's your primitive is why yet. It's your primitive is why yet. I like to get to know ya so I can show ya. Put the pussy on ya like a.
We begin with the Champions League, where Ukraine's Shakhtar Donetsk are now playing against Bayern Munich in the home leg of their last 16 tie with Bayern. However, the match is being played at the Arena Lviv, thousands of kilometers from the team's abandoned Donbass arena, now caught up in a war zone. Given these extraordinary circumstances, Shakhtar are 5 points behind Dynamo Kiev and still in with a shout of retaining their league crown. As for the Bundesliga leaders, they are in top form, having humped Hamburg 8-0 on the weekend. And so far, the score is 0-0. Paris Saint-Germain are also now playing against Chelsea in Paris in the first leg of their last 16 tie. It will be a tough match for PSG, who are hobbled by multiple injuries. And again, the score is 0-0. Recruiting Zlatan Ibrahimovic to draw attention to world hunger paid off for the World Food Programme when a video of the soccer star with the names of people who do not have enough to eat inked on his torso went viral. After scoring a goal just 2 minutes into a French League match against Caen on Saturday, the Paris Saint-Germain striker stripped off his shirt to reveal the names of 50 hungry people. The move earned him a yellow card, as the rules dictate, but Ibrahimovic wasn't overly concerned, having got his message across the world. The UN estimates that 805 million people, that is 1/9 of the world's population, do not have enough to eat.
Whenever you see me, you will see them.
And finally, a quick look at the weather. Cold weather continues across most regions tonight with a slight chance for light rain in the northern regions. Similar conditions continue tomorrow with rain in the northern and central parts. An Arctic front begins to affect the kingdom as of tomorrow night, causing a drop in temperatures and bringing more rain accompanied by hail and snowfall on mountainous areas in the northern and central regions. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect fair conditions tomorrow with northerly moderate winds and slightly high seas. Here now is a look at temperatures forecast for tonight and tomorrow. And to close, here's a reminder of the day's top stories. Daesh terrorists burned 45 Iraqis for unknown reasons, and Iraq's UN ambassador calls the group's crimes a genocide and urges more help to free areas under their control. Egypt calls for a United Nations resolution mandating an international coalition to intervene in Libya after the beheading of 21 Egyptian Christians in the country by Daesh terrorists. And two adventurous filmmakers go in search of the Aurora Borealis in Norway as they look to make a documentary about the science behind the Northern Lights. And with this, we come to the end of this edition of the news. I'm Alia Tuqan. Thank you for joining us. Have a good night and stay warm.